Vishnu Varunendra Rudra Marutastunavanti Divyaistavait Vedais Sangopakramopanisadait Gayanti Jang Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pasyanti Jang Yoginaha Yasyantangana Vidussurasura Devaya Tasmai Namo Namah. Our salutations to that Supreme Being who is one without a second, whom the sages call by various names. Our salutations to Him whose glory has been sung through the rapturous hymns of the scriptures of the world, but whose limitless and infinite glory none can comprehend. But again, whom the sages and devotees realize within their hearts in their deepest contemplation. Him we salute again and again. May He shine in our hearts, manifest therein all His glory, and dispel all darkness and ignorance. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. The subject this morning, Saints and Miracles. This subject involves many questions which need to be answered. In the first place, what is religion? What is the purpose of life? What is saintliness? Have miracles anything to do with religion or saintliness? These are the questions and most fundamental questions that I shall try my best to answer. Now let us try to understand what is meant by religion. Now if you study any religion of the world, you will find one fundamental truth, the truth of God. God is. Every religion believes in the existence of God. And every religion, you will find, tries to give proofs, certain proofs for the existence of God. Now again, the problem is, one may read those proofs for the existence of God. One can advance certain proofs for the existence of God. But again, there are counter proofs to disprove the existence of God. One great seer philosopher, Shankara, he said that you cannot at one period of time gather all the intellectuals of the world together and come to a decision as to whether God exists or not. It's not possible. And then again, supposing you prove the existence of God, or another disproves the existence of God, what is it the man is proving and what is the man disproving? An idea of God. But God is a reality. God is not an idea. And so where lies the proof? The proof lies in this fact that God can be known, can be realized, can be experienced that is not enough again. This great seer philosopher, Shankara, again says, in the matter concerning Brahman, just to accept revelation, that is, the words of the scriptures, that others have seen God, others have known God, and to accept and believe that is not enough. You must have the personal experience of God, and that is the one and the greatest proof. And religion means just that, to realize God, to experience God. Sri Ramakrishna used to say again and again, in this age of ours, in this present age, when somebody asked him, have you seen God? Yes, I see him more clearly, more definitely, more distinctly than I see you. And then he said that, take for instance milk. You hear about milk. Then you see milk. And then you drink milk. There's a difference. And unless you drink milk, you don't know what milk is. Similarly, you hear about God. You read about Him. Or even you may have a vision. That's not enough. You have to be intimate with Him. And you have to realize your union with Him. And that is religion. Now again, the next question arises. Nobody has seen God with these eyes. Nobody hath heard the word of God with these ears. Our senses cannot give us that experience of God. And so again, how to experience God? And so these great saints and sages point out that not within these three states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, you can have an experience of God. You have to transcend these three states of consciousness. And then there is that possibility in every human soul to transcend these states of consciousness and reach the fourth, the transcendental. Then, of course, every religion and every teacher gives us methods and means by which we can experience that truth. You see, religion is experimental as much as science is experimental. You see, you come to a scientist and he doesn't tell you to believe in what conclusions he has arrived at. He says, come to my laboratory, I'll show you. Experiment and find out for yourself. Similarly, in spiritual life, in religion, is something that an illumined soul, one who has experimented and experienced that truth of God, can point out to you. Now, here are the methods and means. Experiment with these and see for yourself. And you do not have religion until you have experienced God. Now again, here comes another point. It is transcendental. It is naturally, I suddenly use the word naturally, but I want to say it's naturally supernatural. Because nature means what we experience, what we know. So this transcendental means immediately something supernatural. And there is a belief in every country, all over the world, that one who transcends the senses And one who has the experience of that, of God, gets supernatural powers. It's a belief. And such people can perform miracles. In other words, saints have become synonymous with miracles through a fundamental misunderstanding. Now let us try to figure out. As a general rule, this reminds me, at one time I was a little boy, about 14 years old, and just there came a so-called saint. I'm saying deliberately using the word so-called saint because his life proved otherwise later. And this man was a guest in a house next door to us. And he had this power. You think of any fragrance, rose, jasmine, anything, or bad odor even. You think and touch his toes, and then you smell your fingers, you get that fragrance. And I was quite excited. I wanted to be his disciple immediately. But then there was another older man who knew me. He said, "Come here. You go and read Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, such and such aphorism of Patanjali, and you'll find out the truth." But we shall come to that. The matter of fact is that multitudes want to see miracles performed by saints. They can accept a saint as a saint if he can perform miracles. But the point is this again. Suppose a saint performs a miracle. For instance, Jesus, we find, performed miracles. And so they accepted him as a great divine man. But when it comes to following him, no. For instance, we read in the Bible, from that time many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. And he didn't show any miracle. As we find that he refused to show any miracle, to give you the illustration from the Bible. Then certain of the scribes and of the Pharisees answered, saying, "Master, we would see a sign from thee." But he answered and said unto them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign." Think how firm he was. "And there shall no sign be given to it." And again, when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him. And he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words. But Jesus answered him nothing. So we find again, from that time many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. Then said Jesus unto the 12, "Will ye also go away?" Then Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life." Here is the crux of the problem. Thou hast the words of eternal life. Now, before I come to that again, let me point out, or let me try to explain what these miracles are, how they can be performed. And in fact, you don't have to be spiritual or religious to perform these miracles. No magic. Miracles can be performed. For instance, take what science is doing today. And the miracles in a way. And how? By controlling nature. Controlling the external nature, science is performing miracles. You see, perhaps we'll see a man is going to the moon. Now, the same way, with controlling the inner nature. In other words, simple principle of concentration of the mind. If you have gained the power of the concentration of mind, no matter how you gain it, then certain miracles are there that can be performed by concentrating upon certain way, in certain ways or certain methods, as I shall presently read out to you. The main factor is concentrated mind. Now, the question may be asked, can they be demonstrated and proved? Yes, they can be demonstrated. But how it is done, they can only say, now this is the way to do it. But whether there is causal connection, cause and effect, you cannot show. And in fact, you see, it is like this. A scientist can demonstrate. But suppose I have no understanding of science. Can he prove anything to me? He can show me, he can demonstrate to me. But I would not be convinced. Yes, he does all this. He can do all this. He can fly. The aeroplane flies, I see it. But how it is done, he may try to explain to me, but it will be all Greek to me. Same way with the miracles. They can be demonstrated, but they cannot make you understand how they do it. Anyway, let me read out to you how these miracles are done through the power of concentration, and how many kinds of miracles are there. The word Sanjama is used by Patanjali. You see, Patanjali was a great yogi that lived, I think 200 years before Christ. But he was not the originator of these principles of yoga, but he was simply an editor and a compiler. So those principles existed centuries before Christ. And the word Sanjama means intense concentration. So he says, by making Sanjama on the three kinds of changes, one obtains knowledge of the past and the future. In other words, if you concentrate upon the subconscious mind, you can know your past and you can know your future. By making Sanjama on previous thought waves, one obtains knowledge of one's past lives. By making Sanjama on the distinguishing marks of another man's body, one obtains knowledge of the nature of his mind. You see a peculiar mark in another's face, and then you concentrate upon that. Then you know the nature of his mind. What do you gain? If one makes Sanjama on the form of one's body, obstructing its perceptibility and separating its power of manifestation from the eyes of the beholder, then one's body becomes invisible. You see, I may be standing here right before you. You won't be able to see me. I'm not going to demonstrate that. By making sanjama on the hollow of the throat, one stills hunger and thirst. The astronauts should know that. By controlling the nerve currents that govern the lungs and the upper part of the body, the yogi can walk on water. By controlling the force which governs the prana, he can surround himself with a blaze of light. By making sanjama on the relation between the ear and the ether, one obtains supernatural powers of hearing. By making sanjama on the relation between the body and the ether, or by acquiring through meditation the lightness of cotton fiber, the yogi can fly through the air. See, you don't have to pay. Then, after all this, then you know what he says? They are powers in the worldly state. They are powers in the worldly state, but they are obstacles to samadhi. They are obstacles to your attaining knowledge of God. Then he says, by giving up even these powers, the seed of evil is destroyed and liberation follows. Now, why does he bring this particular aphorism? By giving up even these powers, the seed of evil is destroyed and liberation follows. Because as a general rule, as I pointed out, these powers come to you if you deliberately practice concentration in a certain way. And those who are seeking powers, they don't want to give up those powers, of course. But there is a great significance to this aphorism. You may not be seeking any power. You may not be concentrating in a particular way to attain a particular power, but you'd be meditating upon God. You'd be absorbed in the consciousness of God, and then suddenly you may feel that you have got some power. And of course, if you go to use that power, we are told you may once and then forget. If you continue to use that power, your door to spiritual life, to spiritual growth is locked. At one time, a young disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, while he was meditating, suddenly he got the power of seeing and hearing at a distance. So he'd go to meditate, and suddenly 200 miles away, he could see something what somebody is doing. And so it was a great disturbance to him. So he came to Sri Ramakrishna and said, what am I to do? He said, do not meditate for a few days. Now, again, you see, Sri Ramakrishna used to have a parable about it, about powers. One time, there were two brothers, and one brother went out, renounced the world, and became a yogi. After 12 hours, he came back. And this lay brother said, now, brother, what have you accomplished in these 12 years? What have you achieved? Then he said, come with me, I'll show you. So both of them went to the bank of a river. And this yogi brother walked on water and went across. And this lay brother called for a ferry boat, gave him a nickel, and went to the other side. And then this yogi brother said, look what I have achieved. And this lay brother said, worth the nickel. And you see, if you consider these very powers you will find they are worthless. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna said. He had the vision that they are just rubbish, garbage can. Now again, the question arises, what is saintliness then? And in this connection again, I am reminded, one time I was visiting Assisi in Italy. And I went to visit the monastery, St. Benedictine Monastery. And there was a young monk who could speak English. And so he was telling us what miracles this saint had performed and all that. I listened to those. And then I asked this young monk, are you here as a monk to learn how to perform those same miracles? Of course, this poor monk just was confused. And he couldn't answer anything. Now, the question is, what is saintliness? Is there any criterion by which we recognize? Very difficult. You see, as I pointed out, that it is to realize God, to experience God. And the effects, I shall point out, but the effects are all inward. And that is why it is very difficult to recognize a man of God. Now, for instance, we read in the Bible, even when a divine incarnation comes, he is not recognized. Take, for instance, Jesus. We read in the Bible, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he hath a devil. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, behold, a man gluttonous and a wine-bibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. Take, for instance, Buddha. He had a following when he was practicing severe austerities. They were great friends and great disciples of Buddha. They followed him everywhere when he was practicing severe austerities. And then when Buddha realized that by practicing severe austerities, it doesn't lead you anywhere, and he gave up, then these people left him, saying, oh, he has degenerated himself. You take the life of Ramakrishna. He was considered a crazy man by many. My grandfather happened to see him, when he was a young boy. My grandfather was a lawyer, and you know how Ramakrishna had to go and be the witness in a particular case. And so my grandfather was the lawyer, and then he refused to give the witness, saying that, look, if I go and give the witness, it won't be in favor of you, so better leave me out. And so he was left out. And my grandfather said, why, you knew him as Godai Pagla, crazy Godai. And then this same grandfather, I gave him his life to read, and every evening he would open that book and read, and tears, ecstatic tears would flow down his down his eyes. You see, the thing is, to in a slangy way, I can say, a cabbage seller trying to evaluate the diamond. What happens? Now then, is there no way to judge and know? I mean, the living saints. Yes, after Christ passed away, Buddha passed away, Ramakrishna passed away, then gradually people begin to recognize how great they were. But is there any way to recognize a living saint? Yes. But one has to be a spiritual aspirant. In other words, you have to seek for that eternal life. And then this is the test. As you sit in his presence, as you come near him, of course, your heart has to be open. You find your mind is moving towards God naturally. Just as you go to a doctor and you think of medicine, just as you go to a lawyer and think of law case, similarly, when you go to a holy man, your mind naturally thinks of God. And this we have seen from day to day in the company, in the association of these disciples of Ramakrishna. And so much so that we felt that to realize God is such a simple, easy matter, as if it is something that is like a fruit in the palm of your hand. You can get it. They made you feel that way. Then again, in their external behavior, of course, you see their love, their compassion, their sympathy. They see no sinner or saint. And they do not hate sinners. But one thing one has to have, his heart and lips the same. That's what I asked a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Prabhavananda, what is religion? And his answer was this: to make the heart and the lips the same. In other words, you have to be sincere, earnest, simple. And then it is that no sinner before the saint. And then again, another characteristic is, when you see a real man of God, he is a man of God. It's neither a Hindu, nor a Christian, nor a Buddhist. And this we recognize this way in these disciples of Ramakrishna. I look at them and try to think, what are they exactly? Hindus? Not exactly. Christians? Not exactly. What are they? The answer would come from inside. They are men of God. And of course, in their inner life is, you see, there's a continuous, in the words of the great seer philosopher Shankara, there's a continuous consciousness of unity of Atman and Brahman. And you see, that is the also way to attain the knowledge of God. To quote from the teachings of the Gita. Though a man may be soiled with the sins of a lifetime, let him but love me. Rightly resolved, in utter devotion, I see no sinner. That man is holy. Holiness soon shall refashion his nature to peace eternal. O son of Kunti, of this be certain, the man that loves me, he shall not perish. Now in this connection, I shall again read out to you from the Bhagavad Gita what Sri Krishna says about the signs of a holy man, of a saint. You see, his disciple Arjuna asked him this question: Krishna, how can one identify a man who is firmly established and absorbed in Brahman? Mark the verse, is firmly established. You see, a spiritual aspirant is struggling, but not yet established. And that doesn't mean that he's a failure. But he will fall and he will rise, and ultimately he will become firmly established. How can one identify a man who is firmly established and absorbed in Brahman? In what manner does an illumined soul speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? In answer to these questions, Sri Krishna says, he knows bliss in the Atma and wants nothing else. You see, he has found a sweetness inside. He renounces cravings. Cravings torment the heart. He renounces cravings. I call him illumined. You see, there's a fullness in him. So all desires have left him. Not shaken by adversity, not hankering after happiness, free from fear, free from anger, free from the things of desire. I call him a seer, an illumined. Now in this connection, I wish to point out one thing. You see, the seer, or even a spiritual aspirant, as you practice meditation, as there grows love for God, you feel a sweetness, a joy, a bliss inside. Happiness comes through contact with objects as a general rule, but such happinesses are short-lived, temporary. But this is something that is permanent, abiding. Now again, you see, if we analyze, the happiness that we may derive by coming in contact with objects, really it is the inside happiness that we see outside. You know, you can give an illustration just like a dog chewing a dry bone, how he enjoys, and gets all the juice out of it, his own juice. The same way is our own juice that we really enjoy in the outside contact. So the real happiness, therefore, is inside. And this is what the illumined soul experiences and realizes. The bonds of his flesh are broken. He is lucky and does not rejoice. He is unlucky and does not weep. I call him illumined. See that balance, poise in the midst of the opposites of life. The opposites of life will exist outside. There will be heat and cold, pleasure and pain, but he remains unmoved. The tortoise can draw in its legs. The seer can draw in his senses. I call him illumined. The abstinent run away from what they desire, but carry their desires with them. A spiritual aspirant who is trying to control himself, he keeps away from the things and objects of desire. But in the mind, there lingers desire. When a man enters reality, he leaves his desires behind him. Even a mind that knows the path can be dragged from the path. The senses are so unruly, but he controls the senses and recollects the mind and fixes it on me. I call him illumined. Thinking about sense is giving a psychological process how a man can degenerate himself. Thinking about sense objects will attach you to sense objects. Grow attached and you become addicted. Thwart your addiction, it turns to anger. Be angry and you confuse your mind. Confuse your mind, you forget the lesson of experience. Forget experience, you lose discrimination. Lose discrimination and you miss life's only purpose. When he has no lust, no hatred, a man walks safely among the things of lust and hatred. To obey the Atman is his peaceful joy. Sorrow melts into that clear peace. His quiet mind is soon established in peace. The uncontrolled mind does not guess that the Atman is present, how can it meditate? Now here's a wonderful truth brought out. You see, the mind is restless. Mind is running to the external world. We cannot even imagine that God is within us. You see, we are carrying God all the time with us. And we do not even guess because of the restlessness of the mind. And yet we want happiness. But here, let's see what he points out, and which is true. The uncontrolled mind does not guess that the Atman is present. Atman is God within. The true you. How can it meditate? Without meditation, where is peace? Without peace, where is happiness? The wind turns a ship from its course upon the waters. The wandering winds of the senses cast man's mind adrift and turn his better judgment from its course. When a man can still the senses, I call him illumined. The recollected mind is awake in the knowledge of the Atman, which is dark night to the ignorant. The ignorant are awake in their sense life, which they think is daylight. To the seer, it is darkness. Water flows continually into the ocean, but the ocean is never disturbed. Desire flows into the mind of the seer, but is never disturbed. Desire may arise, melts away. The seer knows peace. The man who stirs up his own lusts can never know peace. He knows peace who has forgotten desire. He lives without craving, free from ego, free from pride. This is the state of enlightenment in Brahman. A man does not fall back from it into delusion. Even at the moment of death, he is alive in that enlightenment. Brahman and he are one. So you see, this can be attained and has to be attained while living on earth. And it is possible for everyone to realize this. And that is the only purpose of life. Because therein is reached perfection. Absolute perfection. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrittorma Amritangamaya. Abir Maiti. Rudrajatte Dakshinang Mukhang. Enamang Pahi Nityam. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from death to immortality. Lead us from darkness to light. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace.